Hi guys, my name's Emma. I interned this semester at the PD Green program, which is a nonprofit in Boston, but also in all of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. And we are a program that sends trained tutors to go into already existing education programs in prisons and jails to facilitate the education of incarcerated students to help them achieve their academic goals. So a little bit about myself. I went into this internship with a little bit more what I like to perceive as of an understanding of the criminal justice system. Both of my parents are lawyers. My dad is a former assistant district attorney for the Middlesex Sheriff's Office. And my mom, now he's a private defender in Massachusetts and Boston. And my mom is the chief legal advisor for the Middlesex House of Corrections, which weirdly ended up being one of the jails that I went into tutor in. I was introduced to the criminal justice system as a kid, idolizing my dad for being the person who was sending people away to prison for doing really heinous crimes. And that philosophy didn't start to change until I got to college and became a women's studies major and a social work major and started to understand the implications of what it really meant to send people away. I took some classes in the women's studies department where we talked about the implications of mass incarceration and how it's not really doing the job that we might think it is. It's targeting people of color, lower socioeconomic status people, and it's just really not a system that is in any way doing rehabilitation, and it's rather doing punishment. So I then did this internship knowing the implications of mass incarceration and wanting to change that, and have completely changed radically my views on prison. Now I am a strong advocate for prison abolition and reform. Not only prison education needs to be reformed, but I feel that every aspect of prison in itself needs to be reformed. So the problem is that people in the United States who are incarcerated are from socially marginalized communities, low-income communities, and minority communities. They have barriers that include social welfare programs, public housing. You can't vote many times when you've been incarcerated, and they have barriers to higher education. This is a problem because a lot of the people who are going into our prisons are of communities that are people of color, of lower socioeconomic status. So it's perpetuating the cycle of incarceration. Once you've been in, it's really, really hard to get out. Our system, our government spends $86 billion a year on incarceration. That means $50,000. That is way above the poverty line. If I get a starting job that has $50,000, I will be pumped. They spend $50,000 a year housing one inmate. So 90% of people will be released once they've been to prison, but only 40%, 90% of people will be released, but 40% will recidivate within 3 years. That is a problem because it means that we are not preparing our people in prison, our incarcerated populations, to be in the real world afterwards. So what the PD Green program does is we send tutors from these elite universities, Boston University, Harvard, Tufts, MIT, and Brown, into correctional facilities, which are listed on the side. We send trained tutors. So there's a 5-hour training process at the beginning where we talk about ethical volunteerism, undue familiarity, your privilege. We recognize your privilege, talking about how you can bring in your own experiences without undermining the intelligence of your students, who often the education system has completely failed. So Boston University goes to the MCI Framingham, Harvard goes to all of those, Tufts goes to two correctional facilities, MIT goes to one facility, and Brown goes to the Adult Correctional Institute of Rhode Island, which is a complex of 5 correctional facilities on one compound, which include minimum, medium, and maximum security prisons for both men and women. I actually got the experience of being able to tutor in 2 correctional facilities. One is Boston Pre-Release, which is a pre-release center. That means that the people who are there only have 2 years left on their sentence. So it's a way of creating more work experience for these incarcerated populations. And it's been a great experience. I've been tutoring this one man who is getting out very soon. He has a daughter who he unfortunately hasn't been able to see since he's been in prison. But we worked in the beginning on math, and he was really excited because he was like, I'm going to be able to help my daughter with her homework, which is something that was unimaginable before this. He was being tutored by the Petey Green program. And then we got to a point where he was like, okay, I feel good about math. I'm going to be able to help my daughter a little bit with her homework. Now I really want to be able to read my daughter's stories. So we started reading Of Mice and Men out loud. And not only were we talking about the ways that he was going to be able to use his language and talking skills after being able to read an entire book out loud to me, which is, I know sounds like it's something that is very tangible to a lot of us, but for people who have never read before they come into prison, reading an entire book, which this was his first book he had ever read, let alone out loud, was very amazing for him, because not only is he going to be able to teach his daughter and read her books, but also his insight and the potential for his intelligence and his education was amazing. I've read Of Mice and Men a few times. I love that book, but there were moments in the book where I was reading the same passage that he was, but we were seeing it from two completely different experiences. For example, there was one moment where we were talking about Crooks. He is a stable boy, or a stable man in the book. He is an older man, he's black, and Steinbeck talks about all of his possessions. Talking about his raggedy clothes, what he has on him, and my experience was oh, this guy is poor, this guy doesn't have a lot of belongings, this guy, I don't know, he's disheveled. And that was my experience of reading that. My student, when he read that, it mentioned that he had a 1905 version of the California Civics Code, and he stopped for a second. And he doesn't do that. He talks a lot. He loves to talk and hear himself speak. And so I was like, what's up, Derek? What is going on? What's going through your brain? And he was like, He's like, I know why he's carrying that around with him. He's a smart man. He's super intelligent. He is a black man in the 1900s. He needs to know his rights. This next statement was in the prison context, so it kind of sunk my heart a little bit. He said, black men, when they don't know their rights, end up in a place like this. I also have the experience of being able to tutor in a medium security jail, which is where my mom actually works. I'm tutoring a man who has OCD, which is a very hard process, but I'm a social work major, and it's really good to be able to use my skills and learning how to deal with people with mental illness in the prison context, because believe it or not, a lot of the people in prison, the majority of people in prison have mental illnesses. So not only was I able to tutor in the prisons, but I also had the experience of being able to coordinate day-to-day activities. So I was emailing, well, I still am, I'm emailing our tutors and our TAs to remind them to fill out their forms. I am helping to create trainings, because we have to do 2 follow-up trainings to ensure that we're very educated and able to successfully and effectively tutor our students. And I also have been given the experience to do some really cool research opportunities. One of them is that I am researching expansion ways that that Petey Green can expand to other correctional facilities in Massachusetts, which is really awesome because we're actually starting a new program in MCI Shirley. It's an inside-out program where we're going to be sending TAs to help there, but there is a college professor who is going to bring real college students into a college classroom in a prison. So incarcerated students and students on the outside are going to be able to talk to each other and share experiences, which is very cool, because not only are we sending TAs to help them, but we're also going to be sending real college students who have college experience in ways of framing questions and the way that you would interact in an outside of prison context for prison, but inside. I also was able to do this really cool thing where we do trainings, and they have to fill out a training feedback form, which talks about all of the different ways that we led our training. It says what was most useful, what was least useful, and did this training help you change your views of incarcerated populations? And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but that is what I did. And I also had this crazy amazing experience of being able to read all of the student surveys of how they perceive the Petey Green program. They were overwhelmingly positive. There was not one negative thing that anyone said about the PD Green program. They were saying, they kind of give us a little bit more credit than I think we have, but they would say, I passed my GED and you guys helped me do that. They were saying things like, I didn't know, like the education system has failed me. I've never been able to, I didn't pass high school. I dropped out of school when I was in middle school, but you guys are helping me like achieve my academic goals. Some people's academic goals are passing the GED. Some of their academic goals are learning how to talk. So this is what I did. I like made pie charts of like what the workshops are and like what people found most useful. And then I was able to send these to the whole region and our whole department. And they now have the feedback from the tutors to see what like is more effective in trainings that they could be doing. So you guys can look at the PD Green program on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I think it's really good to walk away from this knowing that the incarceration system as it stands right now is it's not fair. People who are getting put into prisons are from communities that really just, they should not be going in. They're from lower socioeconomic status communities, people of color, and it's a very unfair system. But there's some action steps that you guys can take. For instance, right now, there's a thing in Massachusetts that it's 10 years in solitary you can get for one single infraction. Infractions include postage stamps, include having too many bed sheets in your room. Sometimes just like hugging someone or talking back to a correctional officer can land you 10 years in solitary confinement, when 3 days in solitary confinement has been deemed by the UN as torture. So you guys can call your state representatives, and I really urge you to do that and to look into policies that are in your states to see what is going on in prisons and jails in your communities. And also, if you want to tutor for the PD Green program, we have applications online, and you guys can talk to me afterwards and I can hook you up. Thank you.